You see that her knees have straightened, but she's still leaning forward at her spine.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is more like how a bear, dog, or monkey would try to stand up without the ability to extend the hip. So she then just straightens her knees. So for me, this is categorized as a quadrupedal pattern of movement because this is not how a human moves.
Okay.
Okay.
Secondly, this motion that is lost here or not happening at the hip doesn't just magically disappear, it goes somewhere else. So I start to see a little bit extra extension of her spine here, in that she's planting or pointing her toes more in excess. No creature on land gets their foot in parallel with their shin, except for humans that are dysfunctional, ballet dancers, and models, because for some reason in modeling, there's a stylistic element that the shin and the foot need to be
Yeah.
in line to create a longer appearing leg, like an illusion. For health and performance, it's dysfunctional.
Yeah.
Right.
So based on where her joints are positioned, that her hip is not extended, that her knee is maybe hyperextended, and her ankle's hyperextended. This is more like a dog or a monkey uprighting than truly a human. This is more cost inefficient and excessively stressful on tissues.
Welcome back, Evermind Tribe, and for those of you new to this channel, my name is Celeste and this is Evermind. In today's video, my partner Travis Ortmayer and I have a great conversation with our friend Austin Einhorn. Austin is a movement specialist that I put into quotations because, believe it or not, that title is actually quite limiting for what Austin does. Austin works with athletes of all different kinds and professional athletes of all different kinds, and he's phenomenal at what he does. We wanted to have this conversation today to help. One of my intentions was to help people learn or start thinking about what optimal movement truly is for them. Until I met Austin, I was definitely one of the, I'm get millions, possibly billions of people who didn't really think about how I'm moving, how I'm walking. I was walking incorrectly. I still have a little bit of an incorrect walk that I'm still correcting, and it's getting so much better, and I'm really grateful to Austin for helping me accelerate my healing in that way. I'd been to specialists of all different kinds. I'd been in pain for 13 years. I was just starting to come out of the pain when I met Austin, and he accelerated that healing for me on a whole new level by being able to be the first person that could truly tell me the root causes of why I was having the pain I was having and what was moving in a way that was causing me pain and how I could move better. I'm so utterly grateful for Austin and his work, and the fact that he's continuing to do and push limits and learn new things and do all these incredible things. In the video today, whether you're an athlete or not, this is a relevant conversation to you. We talk about, obviously, movement, where he gets his ideas of what optimal movement for humans is, where he gets his ideas for the workouts he gives to his athletes and then he does himself, using play as a form of self-discovery, shifting emotions, and even his new book, Movement Banking, which I'm really excited for the world to receive, by the way. I cannot wait till that thing comes out. All information, by the way, for Austin is below in the description. Please check it out. I'm really hoping that everybody who watches this learns something. I know that if you do, if you're interested in your own movement or in other people's movement, this is going to be a very important video for you to watch. There's so much more I want to say, but I'm just going to let the video speak for itself. If you guys can, please subscribe, like this video, hit that little bell. That would really help us have more conversations, both with Austin and other people who are doing really wonderful things to help healing. We even talk about, Austin has some pretty big goals and intentions with both his book and his life's work with his company, Apiros. So I highly recommend checking it out. Please leave us comments below on what you think, and let's get to the conversation.
I ain't planning a whole intro thing. I mean, I guess we can. Do you want to give an intro, Austin, to who you are and what you do?
Sure.
Go ahead. After you.
My name is Austin Einhorn. Some would call me a movement specialist. I would say that it's not just human movement that I study, but movement of all things, whether it's stars or animals or cars. I do like how cars move, and I like making them move. And I would say I know a little bit about a lot of stuff, and then I know a lot about a little, meaning I like to dabble in a bunch of different information and things that my curiosity leads me to. And then when it comes to movement and performance and health, that's where I really like to dive in and get into all the details and nuances.
I can see putting all those things together probably helps the few things that you know more about.
Oh, absolutely.
Much broader arena.
It wasn't until recently that I even realized that I studying things moving is a hobby of mine. It's been a hobby of mine since a very young age, but because the way, society brings you up, I confined my movement infatuation to work. And then when I would watch a Planet Earth documentary and I'm watching how a starfish moves or how a monkey leaps, I'm so fascinated with that, but I never thought of it in the context of work. It was just that is so cool. And I'm looking at the joint angles and the speed and how they coordinate where they're looking, that kind of stuff.
So that's what I was going to ask you. I was that kind of led into one of the questions I had is how do you come up with, because obviously I've seen you and he's seen you and we both experienced what you do as well. And it's freaking amazing. And I've been curious, how does he come up with all those different ideas? And is that part of how? I'm assuming you use a lot of different things from what I know.
That's kind of my number one question is where do you get your inspiration for the movements you come up with?
Yeah. So a lot of it is based on evolution. One of my goals is not to just understand how humans move, but understand how life moves. And this is relatively recent and part of my book, but there's this current belief right now that to stabilize the spine, you should suck your belly button towards your spine. And I think this comes from some bad research or poorly understood information. But if you just look at how every life form combats gravity or works with gravity in a vertical way, it's always with a cylinder. And then you can see this in a fractal pattern, meaning at various sizes and scales, the same pattern repeats. So if you look at our neck as part of our spine, as well as our lumbar spine, they're both cylindrical parts of our vertebrae. And then what wraps around it is also cylindrical muscles. And so if it were true that we should suck in our stomach to stabilize our lumbar spine, then we should all be suffocating ourselves as well to stabilize our necks. For
That's
instance,
a good way of putting that. That's never thought of it that way. But
so
you make a great point there.
Yeah, if you wanted to chop down a tree, all you would need to do is carve out its stomach. Right?
Yeah. Makes sense.
That's how a tree falls down. And yet, when we have this very narrow-minded view of how humans move because we're supposed to be some special species, then that we should suck in our stomach to stabilize our spine, that just has too many logical fallacies for me to really believe that. Then secondly, if you watch the best athletes who have lasted the longest amount of time, none of them do it.
None of them suck in their stomachs.
Yeah. So
yeah, no, that's okay.
back to your original question, how do I get my ideas? That's one example of, I have a framework of evolution and how insects and animals and fish and life moves on Earth. And then I compare it to what I see in front of me with my athlete. So I have my model of what I've seen with all of life move and what patterns continue to repeat themselves. And then what am I seeing in front of me? And then it's how creatively can I get them to do what life does and get those to overlap.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
In case I have a habit of doing that. Working on it. So when you see that an athlete in the beginning for you, when you would see that an athlete, or I'm assuming any person too, isn't doing XYZ, how could be optimal, but maybe I'm assuming you didn't always know what optimal would be, or did you kind of always know?
No, that's, I'm still learning what optimal really is. And then my expectations have changed to initially growing up through American athletics. It was practice makes perfect and you want perfect, but I realize that's it's quite fragile mindset. And so for me, it's what bandwidth or range of movements are acceptable for that person. Okay. Maybe a better analogy is within my book, it's titled Movement Banking, and it's an analogy for how we spend our movement is like spending movement money. And every workout, every competition is us making a withdrawal or even a loan against our own movement bank account. There's an interest rate. The interest rate is based on how well we move. Someone who has a really low interest rate moves similarly to how life is supposed to move on Earth. Someone with a high interest rate moves dysfunctionally, or like just moving like how humans should not move. Mm-hmm. So someone who has a big movement bank account then can afford to make some pretty compensatory movements. They can move like shit and survive. Mm-hmm. Like,
yeah,
I think I have a pretty good. What's that?
I've done it. I see it all the time. I've done it.
Yeah, I have no problem putting myself into precarious scenarios because I, one, trust my abilities to heal myself and perform in those scenarios, but two, I know that I've got a pretty good movement bank account, so I can afford to take some risk. I can be a venture capitalist.
I like that. I love the metaphors you come up with too, by the way. They're great. I don't know how to come up with those, but that's a whole other story, I'm sure. What initially got you into doing what you do specifically? Because it's not like what most people, it's not like it's physical therapy. It's not like it's, I mean, it is, but it's not. It's much more unique.
I have a little bit of it's a blessing and a curse where I can't help but find problems in things. And when people make some claims and then I try to prove those claims with my athletes, and like I'm doing it exactly how I was taught. So the methods aren't wrong. There's something wrong with these principles. So then I would search for more information, search for more answers. And when I can't find an answer, then I start creating my own.
Love it. He's really good at it too. I've watched him a lot. It's amazing.
So going back a little bit, back to the movement patterns for life on Earth. I think we talked about, human movement, and then how it can kind of regress towards more of a creature-like movement through injury. And can you talk a little bit about that? I thought that was really interesting.
So normally how movement or how evolution is studied and how Darwin made it popular is through beak sizes and eye color and genetics and those kinds of things, and more physical, tangible traits. But I hadn't yet really thought of how our movements evolved. I hadn't thought about how movement was similar between species. And then I started looking into that. So once life came onto land, it sprouted 4 legs and 3 joints. in each leg. Everything that moves on land has a hip, a knee, and an ankle. Spiders, centipedes, humans, dogs, those three main joints. So there's not four and there's not two because that just doesn't work. So that's one thing that I see. Now, what's interesting is the main difference, say, between a dog and a human is we're being upright. So the position of the joints, how the hip and knee straighten at the same time for us to stand straight up, where a dog will keep their hip bent. So I compare how each joint is moving compared to what we know to be a normal human movement pattern, which is say standing or walking and occasionally getting to a straight knee and back and hip, versus some people who they only straighten their knee but they don't straighten their hip to stand up. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So here, if
Yeah.
I may just show a picture. So you see
Okay.
her, okay?
Mhm.
You see that her knees have straightened, but she's still leaning forward at her spine.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is more like how a bear, dog, or monkey would try to stand up without the ability to extend the hip. So she then just straightens her knees. So for me, this is categorized as a quadrupedal pattern of movement because this is not how a human moves.
Okay.
Okay.
Secondly, this motion that is lost here or not happening at the hip doesn't just magically disappear. It goes somewhere else. So I start to see a little bit extra extension of her spine here, in that she's planting or pointing her toes more in excess. No creature on land gets their foot in parallel with their shin, except for humans that are dysfunctional, ballet dancers, and models, because for some reason in modeling, there's a stylistic element that the shin and the foot need to be
Yeah.
in line to create a longer appearing leg, like an illusion. For health and performance, it's dysfunctional.
Yeah.
Right.
So based on where her joints are positioned, that her hip is not extended, that her knee is maybe hyperextended, and her ankle's hyperextended, this is more like a dog or a monkey uprighting than truly a human. This is more cost inefficient and excessively stressful on tissues.
Yeah, that makes sense.
This woman is Icelandic, isn't she?
Yeah, she
Old
is.
Sigurdsar daughter. Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
great last name.
Yeah.
But okay, so looking at the movement pattern there with the foot in line with the lower leg, the hyperextension of the knee. I mean, obviously there's like a degree of energy loss when her hip doesn't extend fully and the spine overextends.
I wouldn't say it's lost. It's this. So this is one of the laws of. It's a law of conservation of energy. It's typically in physics. It can apply here in that the energy isn't lost. It's just changed. And so
Okay.
what you're seeing that she lost at the hip, she put into the ankle and the knee.
Okay. So would fixing the hip issue cause her jump to be better? I guess, would she be able to jump higher or more effectively?
Probably over time. Initially, it would probably be lower, but she would be making a lower interest withdrawal from her movement bank account.
And that was my next question. Was it
Yeah.
going to lead to less wear and tear on the body
Yeah.
over time? Okay.
And it's also going to eventually be more energy efficient. So she's a CrossFitter. If you look at the people dominating the CrossFit games, which is Matt Fraser and Tia Claire Toomey, and prior to that, Rich Froning, they all move really well. Like it's an energy efficiency game.
Mhm.
Yeah.
CrossFit is. The ones who lose, I mean, in a somewhat comical sense, I could say they move more like a dog than a human. Or worse would be a fish.
Okay. So how would you characterize human movement as fish-like?
It's a lot of so how if you look at some comparative anatomy, a whale's pectoral fin has the same bones that we do.
Yeah.
They have a humerus, a radius, and ulna. They don't have we call an elbow. It's there because it's a joint. They have this same unison or meeting of these bones meeting one another, but it doesn't bend. It's locked out. So when somebody goes on their hands and knees or is hanging and they have a locked out limb and they've lost the ability to bend it with force, I would call that an aquatic movement. Most easily seen is if you go just people watching. Well, you can't really see any people right now because everybody's stuck in their homes.
In the next few months sometime.
Well, sometimes when I'm not walking, I do watching.
If you just stare out your window and watch your neighbors walk, eventually you will see somebody walk by with their knee locks out upon hitting the ground. And so what happens then is they're making their limb rigid. They're getting rid of those 3 joints that all land things have and going back to one, which is their hip. So they lock their knee out and then they walk on the ground like that. Or they walk through without bending their knee as much. When the heel contacts the ground in humans, the knee should bend. And then as it bends, we come up and over it and straighten. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Did I paint a picture? I can show you guys another picture.
Yeah, I've had to do. I've still been practicing all my hip walking advice from Austin over the years. Still have lots of practice.
That's another question I've got. My foot, the whole work that we did, trying to get my left foot cleared up. It's been sore since we worked together.
Really?
Yeah, but I mean, part of it was learning how to make it feel like my right foot does, and to be able to flex that arch without curling my toes or picking any of them up. And that took me months. That has taken a lot of time.
Yeah, but
I feel like I can stand there now and not have to dig my toes into the ground. So it's coming along.
Consider that investment or divestment has been going on for years. So the fact that you're able to regain those funds in a matter of months, if we look at it from an investment point of view instead of training, like miraculous, like awesome. You've just saved yourself a shit ton of movement money.
Oh, hey, I like hearing that. All right. All right.
So I'm glad to hear it's getting better. So if we look at his arm here, his elbow is locked out, hyperextended. He's loading his bones more than his muscles. I'd say this joint is basically useless at this point. This is more like an aquatic arm, based on how it pushes into the ground than, anything that lives on land, a quadrupedal or insect or spider or human.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. I get that. Do you have some more specific questions?
I'd like to go back to the foot.
Okay.
One thing that I'm noticing when I walk on my right, I feel like if this is my big toe side, I feel the weight more evenly centered across these toes. And then on the left foot, it still kind of hits the outside of the big toe. So is that still like an overpronation of it? Or I know there's a lot of things that could factor.
If you feel that it's on the big toe, you might be trying to stabilize with the big toe again instead of the ball of the joint. Does that make sense? So a lot of people with an aquatic type pattern will, if this is the ground, they will start gripping the ground with that big toe instead of getting the ball of the big toe to be one of the legs of the tripod to create stability. Does that make sense?
Because I've heard it referenced that as you're walking, you're supposed to grab the ground with your toes as you step.
No.
But so that didn't quite ring true for me.
Do you think a line, I mean, so here's a perfect example, a way to just start switching your lens over to an evolutionary based thought process. Do you think a lion ever thinks to grab the ground to move?
I mean, that's a good question. I don't know. I would think maybe on a sharp turn, maybe he kind of claws at it a little, but
But he might claw at it, but does he think to? Does he consciously think,
yeah, no,
oh, I'm going to turn. Now I need to claw the ground here, and then I need to push through my paw here, and then turn my head that way?
no, you're right. Okay, no.
Those conscious cues are an invention, and so those are lower on the totem pole for me. If we look through an evolutionary lens, it's about the environment and the position that our bones are in that should get the muscles to react and contract reflexively. Asking a muscle to turn on like that is a little bit like asking a member of the choir to scream for no reason at all.
Okay, gotcha. So then when you have a dysfunction in the movement of the joint, in the way that you're stepping between one foot and the other, how does one consciously go about making the unconscious change?
You need to, well, there's conscious changes. What I would like to do, maybe with you, secondary sometimes. First, it depends on that. It depends on who I'm seeing.
Okay.
For you, because of the nature of your sport, I would like to bring some more conscious awareness to how your bones are positioned, and more than contracting a certain muscle. I'd rather you shape your skeleton in a way that gets those muscles to contract reflexively. You could try to contract the bottom of your foot until the cows come home, but if your bones are not in a position to allow for that to happen, it's just a little bit of reverse logic. The positioning the bones is what creates the muscles to contract, not the other way around.
So then what I've been doing by noticing how my right foot hits and then just letting the step occur naturally and then trying to feel that same thing through my left, is that maybe the right approach?
It's better. Yeah, I like that. Since we've talked last, I would say what would be really useful is a change. There's almost a dysfunctional environment that precedes the dysfunction in the human, that the environment always creates the movement. And so if we change the environment or the behavior a little bit, sometimes or oftentimes the movement will correct itself. So if we look at why the foot evolved, why our foot evolved in particular, is to walk long distances on varied terrain. So you live in a beautiful place. If you just went hiking, really not too structured of a shoe, chances are your foot would start returning back to its evolutionary means.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. So a wide variety of different landing surfaces.
That's, after all, that's how our foot evolved.
Yep. Okay.
It's walking thousands and thousands and thousands of steps on not man-made terrain because we didn't have asphalt and concrete and shoes. We had grass and sand and dirt and roots and rocks and other things.
Okay, I should probably mention for those at home, people who are watching this later, that I have a very collapsed arch on my left foot with some kind of a little bit of a bone, slight deformity, I guess, from breaking it. So it's overly pronated, and we've been working, Austin here has been helping me with basically what he's saying, relearning the movement pattern, but keeping the focus on skeletal positioning more than flexing certain things, certain muscles in the right way. I guess that kind of summed that up.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's not necessarily an easier approach. I mean, oftentimes it's really easy. Just, feel your bicep, contract your bicep as hard as you can.
That's exactly it. You want to take over mentally, consciously. You want to grab or walk or roll or whatever. But yeah.
It takes, you got to learn a little bit more about yourself and your body and improve your awareness of, so oftentimes a coach might ask, how did that feel? And myself included, and I've tried to switch over to not really how do you feel, but where were you positioned? What was your skeleton? How did your skeleton look? What shapes were your spine making? Was it a valley or a hill? A turtle shell? Things like that.
Turtle shell, that's a good way of putting it. Okay.
Yeah.
So I have questions that are more related to like
hit us with your questions.
Business
Yeah.
So your company Apiros Performance, I have questions on that. One.
We're just at Apiros these days.
Oh, it is? Oh, okay, sorry.
First
Apiros
question, is it legal?
Apiros. So this might be the same question to you, but I'm gonna ask, they're two different questions to me, but answer it however. So it's, first off, what's your goal? Start with this. What's your goal, intention with Apiros as a whole? Like, what direction are you going? What are you wanting to do with this?
It's funny that you should ask this. This is actually more recently born. I've got a pretty sizable moonshot with Apiros, my book, my career. I want to try and cure non-contact injury.
I love that. Okay, so that being said, that might have answered it. The questions were, what is most important to you about Apiros? And what is most important that Apiros does? So it sounds like it's most important that it does cure it.
Or take steps there. I think I'm sniffing in the right direction. What's most important about Apiros is the people.
The people all the way around?
Yeah, so I chose, it's Apiros, but the domain name, the Instagram handle is apiros.team. Mm-hmm. And the team isn't any staff. It's not me. It's the athletes and us together. Mm-hmm. It's everybody. I try to have a great culture and an environment because I know how much the environment can foster and create not only great movement, but great performance and great relationships. In the summertime when we're allowed to see other people, I try to have a lot of the youth athletes overlap with some of the pro athletes so that they bump elbows, talk to one another, and I encourage the pro athletes to interject or teach and talk whenever they want to. It's not just me that can teach. And oftentimes it might be more powerful if it's heard from this athlete that the young kid doesn't hear very often from. Similar to how the parents often thank me and then tell their kid, see, I told you so. I've been telling you the same thing for years.
I had one of those nights last night, let me tell you.
I've got a kid that I'll tell the same thing to for 6 months. Cues and all of that stuff. And then one of the other guys in the gym will come over and say the same thing, just maybe a slight tweak on it. And then all of a sudden it clicks. You son of a bitch.
Yeah.
But hey, I totally get what you're saying. It's it takes the village, I guess, to raise an athlete. Mm-hmm. And so the different ideas from different angles and just the right thing being said at the right time by someone other than you sometimes is the perfect way for the person to hear it.
Absolutely. Funny thing that I'll just, a small tangent about like coaching and cueing is there is one of my pro athletes who's aware that I try to limit what I say as often as possible because that can be confusing. It can be excessive cognitive load, but if I'm talking, they're not learning. So he was like, oh, should I not say anything? Oh, I spoke too much, didn't I? And I'm like, no, that's fine. Like they also need to learn how to ignore other people. If they're going to play in a crowd of 1,000 people or their coach that is not me, like their sport coach is just yammering on, not understanding what his words are doing.
Yeah.
I want my athletes to learn how to ignore people expertly. So oftentimes I will talk nonstop to stress that skill.
It's actually a clever way of doing it. That's, yeah. Especially if you've got an athlete who's got, thousands of fans screaming at him.
Okay, so tell me this, because the people who will be watching this will be probably both people who are athletes or who work out regularly and people who would not probably consider themselves to be athletes. They may be
General
active,
fitness.
yeah, general fitness, but I don't know that they would say they're an athlete. Most of what you said applies to, if you're human, this applies to you. With your book that you're writing and even with your company, that is athlete specific, or can anyone get a hold of you, kind of thing? Who do you like to work with?
I'd prefer to work with, my passion is with athletes because I like to meld the challenges of getting them to move really well, as well as enhance their skills on the field. So that's something we haven't talked too much about, but that's one of my passions, is how do you take this movement evolution, this quality of human movement, but get it to show up when someone who's 300 pounds is charging straight at you and wants to rip your head off, or when someone throws a 90-mile-an-hour baseball at you and you need to try to, ensure that your hip rotates as optimally as possible. So how do we get the nuanced and efficient movement to show up in practice and in games and in the moments when championships are won? Because another part of the myths of a lot of fitness and training things is, if I just move well in the gym, then it's going to make me move well in the field, and that's just not true. They need to be blended quite artfully for it to show up when points are scored.
So one of the reasons that, obviously you're my friend and I really enjoy you in general, but one of the reasons I wanted to interview you is, one, because I always learn something every time we talk, even if you're talking about something that has nothing to do with me. It still seems to have everything to do with me. Regardless, it's great.
Just depends on your perspective.
That's true. But I do find, even when I've done work, when you've helped me with my just seeing what was wrong with my imbalance with my body. That
high interest rates.
What's that?
High interest rates.
Right, the high interest rates. Thank you. That's being Austin, I swear to God.
That's a good one, yeah.
It helped me in a way that, I had been to so many people before who couldn't see the things that you see. And I wish that there were more people like you who worked with all kinds of people as well, because, I think so many people could benefit from it. I didn't know until I met you that I was walking incorrectly. Like, the thought never even occurred to me.
Not incorrectly, more like a fish.
Okay.
It's an efficient strategy for
like
moving. It's an efficient strategy for moving if you're in the water and you have a different skeleton and different muscles. But
this is good for me. No, this is good for me. It's fine.
Sorry, I couldn't help it.
No, you can't. It's okay. I just accept it and then carry on. It's good.
It's not wrong. It's just going to cost you.
Right. That one. Not how I would like it to be. Let's do that. Not how I would have wanted to had I known what I know now. So I'm wanting to know, with your book, whenever that's going to be done and published and all that stuff, is it something that anyone can read and it would help them, or is it just for athletes?
No, it's, I wanted anybody to read it, kids included, but the way it ended up coming out, it's probably 17 and up, and it's for anybody who really wants to take responsibility of how they move and how they play. It's not just for athletes. I've had a few of my good friends read some drafts already, and they're not competing in anything, and they're like, this is not just for athletes. Very evidently, if you read between the lines, it's for anybody.
Okay, cool.
For instance, my definition of athlete is appropriate to talk about here. People talk about human athletes as if there's some gifted person that receives some intangible talent from some ethereal source, whatever your beliefs may be. I could disagree completely. An athlete is, well, you've never seen an unathletic lion, an unathletic gorilla, an unathletic ant. Every animal has had to develop athletic capabilities in their own right just to survive. So a human athlete is really just somebody who's gotten an opportunity to develop normal human movement capabilities.
That makes sense. So then you mentioned play, which was one of my next ones. What is the importance of play in your work and life?
Work in my life. One, it's fun, makes things more enjoyable. Two, it's where a lot of innovation and creativity happens. Play is actually a very evolved thing. It's extremely advanced. In an evolutionary sense, only the most complex creatures play. Like,
Okay, yeah,
right?
that makes sense.
Ants don't play.
No.
Fish, I mean, bacteria don't play. Archaic things don't play.
Right.
Monkeys, bears, lions, tigers, mammals play. Humans play. And when we play, we get to go to a limit of our capabilities, because that's kind of where play lies a lot of times in athletic abilities. You can also play with crayons and draw and just be extremely creative as well. That's also a form of play. But for me, it's a form of self-discovery. It's a really sharpening the tools. Play is much more useful to develop athletic adaptations than just rote repetition.
Yeah.
There's been numerous research articles that show health is related to variability.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's hard to argue that a mechanical repetitive repetition of a movement is variable or very much fun. So when you play, you're actually increasing some health.
Yeah, totally.
Play with movement.
So you probably kind of touched on it. That's building a flow state. Play.
You can.
So one of the things I wanted to ask, because I know that you and Celeste have had a lot of talks about flow and how to get into it. What do you still try and get into flow states and try to increase? I'm guessing so. So my question is, what are some of the steps that you like to take in order to put your brain into that state?
I don't know. I found it a lot harder to get there than some of the information that I've come across. So, for instance, how we met was through Stephen Kotler and the former Flow Genome Project. I think they've since split up, but they talked about there being 4 stages of flow, which is a initial stress period, and then a relaxation period, and then there's flow, and then there's the hangover after effect. I've tried that recipe tons of times. I haven't seemed to be able to just make it show up as a formula. For me, the most recent time that I've actually gotten into a true flow state was rock climbing outside. There had to be a danger element where I thought I was going to fall, smash my face on this rock, and take what's known as a giant whipper, where I've got like slack in the rope, and I'm going to fall and then hit the slack and then maybe hit my head on the rock. And I'm on like my entire body weight has to climb up on maybe that much of an edge. And so for me, it took a lot of high stakes to get there. And then because I know about flow, I'm up there and I'm like, oh my God, I'm in a flow state. And then as soon as you realize you're in it, you're not in it.
So much for that.
So I found it very hard to come by, and I don't try to become reliant upon it for performance. I saw a quote from a popular book that's circulating right now called Atomic Habits. And one of the things that I believe I'm paraphrasing here is that really successful people just continue to show up. They have good habits. So with my writing, with my work, with any sort of performance thing, I try to keep the momentum going, keep the ball rolling.
Okay.
I found that to be more useful in my life than flow. Although I do love flow, I would love to have more of it.
So a lot of what Evermind, some of my intentions currently with Evermind that I'm still mulling over and moving forward on and figuring out what works and what doesn't is mindset and play. I know those are two really big in my life and with my relationship and in most of my relationships outside of right here. So I find with play, it's really interesting with play and with flow. Like I have those flow moments, I don't think of it as much. But if I do try to make it a formula, like you're saying, and like we had learned at one point, sometimes it can help. And then sometimes it's like, I'm just thinking of the formula the whole time.
Yeah, for me, I think it might just depend on the kind of person that you are. So if we look at, say, the duality or yin yang of structured or free flowing, Stephen Kotler is a very structured person. If you've read his books, they're amazing, but they're extremely structured, and that's kind of how I've gotten to know him and also as editor. Where for me, as I'm writing this book, I've also learned that I'm not an architect of structure. I'm a gardener. I plant a seed, I prune it, I attend to it every day, I water it, I let it grow this way, and then I think, oh, that's beautiful, but that's not where I want to go, and then I start carving it this way. And so for me, that's been much more useful, and I do get the time dilation with my writing, and when I do that might maybe be a flow state, but God, it's nothing like climbing. The other thing that I do that might trigger is downhill mountain biking. Usually I'm just too apprehensive and want to be safe that I'm so apprehensive, like, okay, go fast, go a little bit faster, go a little bit faster, but don't die. that I don't get into a flow state, because compared to my other maybe extreme sport of snowboarding, if you crash on a mountain bike, bad news bears.
Oh yeah. You should see my Instagram. I don't know if you've seen it. I got bruises everywhere, like everywhere. Bad. Because I got a carbon. It's my first carbon fiber bike, and I have not learned how to.
Hardtail or no?
What's that?
Hardtail or no?
I don't actually know what it is. It's soft, I think. Is it soft tail?
Yeah, you got.
Does it have suspension on the front and the back?
Sorry, yeah,
full suspension.
Yeah. So what I'm learning is, like, my last bike was an aluminum frame, right? Which was both fun. I mean, I love mountain biking. To me, that's my play for me. I had to. That's like, I'm a little kid having a good time. Life is good right now. I don't have to think about anything. I'm just here with nature. It's great. So when I got this carbon fiber, I was out riding and really excited and didn't realize, I mean, when that bike turns, you better be ready to go with it, because it's going. And my body didn't go with it a few times.
Yeah.
Like, ooh, whoops, didn't think it was going to take that short of a period of time. Fascinating. Anyway. Well, in general, I also want to ask about, okay, so you told us kind of in the beginning what you're doing while you're on quarantine. What are you most looking forward to when this is all said and done or over with?
Being with my friends and my clients again. I mean, I live alone.
Yeah, okay.
I've gone on hikes or bike rides with friends, but we stay far apart.
Yeah.
The calmness and appreciation of, like, oh, I can go next to you without having to think about, like, passing this corona on to somebody else. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of trippy.
It's exciting times we live in. Yeah.
how are you handling it then? You've kind of said, but how are you handling it physically, emotionally, mentally?
I think really well. I'm very grateful that I've had experiences that I think have prepared me for this a lot better than most. Financially, I'm not feeling too pinched from it right now. I'm okay. I'm still seeing some clients through digital means, not everybody, but enough. Mentally, emotionally, I think I've got the toolbox to recognize, oh, I'm feeling anxious for no reason at all. Okay, we're done with that now. I'm gonna get on with my life.
You don't have to go down a bottle of vodka to get through it, huh? That's
No.
good.
Bonus.
I'm really good at separating myself from any experienced emotions, and that I don't need to define myself by them. I don't need to act upon them unless I want to. They're just there, and then I watch them float away. Oh, yeah. Okay. Oh, wow.
He has always
I
amazed
get
me with that.
I get
Because
that.
ever since I've known you, you've seemed to be like that. But I think you've told me that you haven't always been that way. Or have you?
No, I mean, I think that's been an underlying part of me for a long time, that I've had maybe a more detached or observer view of my emotions from a very long time. It's not that I don't experience emotions. I mean, I definitely do. It's just that I've been able to observe them quite well. And then with meditation and practice and making it a focused effort, it's only gotten better in recent years.
Do you meditate every day?
I mean, I do it like this. I used to have a very structured practice, and now I play jazz.
Do you really?
No, not musically, meditation jazz.
Okay.
I'm
So
a terrible musician.
which means what?
Yeah.
Where I'll meditate on my walks, washing dishes,
Oh, okay.
or like just randomly throughout the day, and then I'll just I need to sit down. Like, you need to sort some shit out.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's what I mean by jazz.
Got it. I like that. Yeah, I like that. I don't know. I have some more, but you can keep going.
Go ahead.
I gotta look at my list here. Switch this over.
So one thing, as you look at the list, I'll comment on one thing about play. Like, we are designed to play. We have the biggest movement toolbox of all other species, because we've taken everything. We've got aquatic patterns, we've got quadrupedal patterns, and we've got these human patterns. We've got joints and structures that allow for the most amount of variability. Like, our body is designed to play. And so that's one thing that I love about what I do is I'm in the gym, and I think of an idea like, why don't I try that? It's not like this specific human movement pattern. It has no purpose, really. It's just like, let's see what happens. And I've got a lot of confidence myself and in my athletes, where my athletes say, hey, can I try this thing? Yeah, why not? Go for it.
Yeah.
Because if I limit them, then what emotional message does that send? That sends more of a fearful message of like, I don't know if I trust you or your body.
Mm-hmm.
In the appropriate context, I will tell them like, no, you're not ready for that. That's you're going to write a check that you can't cash.
That makes sense. So with play for me, I'm learning. I'm having to relearn how to be playful again in life. Yeah, because I mean, you probably know this just as well as a lot of people, if not more. We get that cut off depending on and depending on your childhood and who your parents or authority figures were. You can get it cut off fairly early.
Yeah.
You have to do these things, you have to do these grades, you have to do this schoolwork, you have to do whatever, right? So I'm finding, that I think that was one thing that I loved so much about how we met, because that was a whole new, for me, that was the first time I'd been around a group of peers in a while who let themselves play. And they were people I really enjoyed. And it was like, oh my God, this is kind of like, to me, it felt a little bit like being a kid again, which I loved. And, you know, what I love about, I'm learning it in my relationship too, because sometimes I should say probably more than sometimes, because he'll say it if I don't. I'm not always super fun and playful.
But what do you mean?
Thank you, babe. I thought I'm doing pretty good too. But I'm learning, you know, one of the reasons I love him so much is because his childlike ways it's like learning it again for me, you know? But I'm finding how much like that guy that I texted you, I think I texted you or I sent you an Instagram on, that Kellen Noelle. I don't know if you looked at his stuff or not. But it wasn't, you know, it's not the same as what's that?
I see the similarities.
Yeah, so there are some similarities. What I enjoyed, it's not necessarily specific. I don't know if I'll say this. It doesn't seem like it's the same specific movements, and he's not going for the same intentions and goals that you are. But what I've noticed with it is how, what I've enjoyed is, it's like, oh my God, I could do different things with my body than what I always do. Because I called him and told him, I said, I don't want to have to do one more freaking squat or one more, you know, okay, do these 3 reps of, you know, 10 squats and these 3, whatever. It's like, I can't, it's too routine for me.
Can you let me nerd out about the squat for a little bit?
Absolutely. Please do.
Travis, you'll enjoy this. So what the squat is, let's define the squat first. It's when the hip, knee, and ankle bend simultaneously. Mm-hmm. You can bend at different rates, but they're all bending. How the squat first emerged in nature. So when do we see those 3 joints bending? Is the first time animals or things came on land and those 3 joints existed. The squat pattern is a movement to change direction. Side to side, front to back, slow down, speed up, stand up, jump up, land, whatever. So we see this movement, a squat, and in humans, the evolutionary definition definitely stays, but we only see it practiced as if we were on an elevator. Up, down, up, down, up, down.
Yeah.
And it's actually, what people think of the squat is actually a very specific and human movement. In the context, it's actually quite unnatural. The only time you see a squat show up in nature or in sport is to change direction. You never see it straight up and down.
No.
Even in my sport of volleyball, when someone's going up to a block, there's still almost always some directionality to it. And so if you look at also the structure of our ankle and our hip, it seems like it's designed to bend at all 3 joints, even at an angle. That your leg can be at a 45-degree angle, and it can still bend at those 3 joints to change your center of mass or change direction. And so I'm with you on, if I do one more this repetition, I'm going to rip my hair out.
Yeah.
Because it's quite unnatural from an evolutionary point of view, even from a sport-specific point of view. So there's infinite athletic training rooms across the world. Like, got to get your squat up numbers, bro. We got to get you up another 100 pounds, and you got to do this rate of force development here. And that research is great. But I'm not saying that going up and down with a lot of weight is bad. I think it's great. I do it all the time. I fucking love it. Feels great. The hormones, the neurotransmitters, I get high on that. But for health and for sport performance, it needs more variability.
Yes. Which is what in one of the workouts I did the other day with him. I mean, we were just like, some of the active warm up was crawling, right? It was just practicing crawling in different ways and moving around, and not just back and forth and back and forth. I mean, you're flipping over, and it's been helping me understand of like, oh, I could do a whole lot of different things with my body if I wanted to. I don't have to do the same things because everybody else is doing the same things. But it put, some new connection in my brain of, okay, I've been so conditioned to watch everybody else and what everybody else is going to do or what they say to do or whatever, that you kind of take play or variability offline. You just take it out because it hasn't been, you haven't used it.
Well, and if you do in a normal gym, you're gonna get
You're a weirdo. Yeah,
like you're an alien.
Mm-hmm. I've done we've done it a few times at the gym, and we always have people come over and stare at us. You and this is a while ago, Melissa. It was the PVC pipe. You're down on your stomach with the PVC pipe on your feet,
Mm-hmm.
and like turning it around, right? And I've gotten it a few times,
I
enjoy, that's fun for me. It's like, yeah, let's do that because it's fun and it's not the same thing I'm always doing. And every time I do, I got people coming over like, what are you doing? Like, I'm doing shit that's fun. Like, I'm doing something that feels good for my body and I like.
And what more reason do you really need than it's fun?
Right.
I want to.
Yes.
But oftentimes, especially amongst professionals, they're like, but it's not purposeful. It's not specific enough. It doesn't matter. I'm like,
okay, yeah. Carry on.
But if it's fun, if you want to talk about the neurochemistry of it, if you start getting that dopamine hit, you're going to get a much higher training output afterwards. They're going to enjoy it. They're going to come back and see you again.
Well, productivity levels. So that's my other part of a lot of the research that I do around play and or active recovery and whatnot is the productivity levels when someone plays versus the people that don't are incrementally different.
Yeah.
Really a big deal.
So I'm going to go back to that athletic perspective. And I see the point you're making about the dopamine and keeping it fun is definitely going to improve your training overall. So my question on that would be, as an athlete who trains for strongman, strength athletics, squats are very important. But like you say, it's the elevator squat. It's the up, down. How would you implement some of this multi-directional squat stuff that you're talking about in with a training routine that involves a focus around the elevator squat?
Yeah. So you touched on two things. One, I want to talk about the play. And so I would also say that it's somewhat of a mentally fragile mindset to think, oh, it has to be fun for it to be effective, or that I need to be having fun to be able to train.
Yeah, I don't think that way at all, though. So.
No, what I would say is actually better is I think each emotion offers pros and cons, gifts and perils. Anger is going to allow you to work really fucking hard, but you might not be that accurate. Depression might lend you to be a little bit more creative because you're like, fuck it, I don't care what happens. I'm going to try this anyways, whatever. So to maybe not force, if I'm not happy, I'm not going to get a good training session but what do I gain from this current emotion? And then those who are maybe more advanced can then just change the emotion, change from nervousness to excitement, or depression to nothingness, equanimity. So that's my thought process on that first point. And then how to enhance just the elevator style repetition. I would say that you would benefit from just doing multivaried squats, just in addition to, but finding
like a workout sometime.
Even as a potentiation, as part of your warm up. So do 3 decent weights in a different position, or with the weights pulling on you differently. I don't know if you've seen me, but I load up the trap bar asymmetrically.
Yeah.
Love that. I might load it up on a fulcrum where the trap bar is here, handle is here, and I lift up it at one angle. So it presents almost like a diagonal squat type of movement. Another instance is I might take a safety squat bar, put bands on it, pulling backwards or backwards and down. So then I'm accelerating up and forward in a squat type pattern over and over and over again. So I'm repping that type of thing out. There's a lot of different creative, I mean, there's so many different ways you can change it. It's really how playful can you get?
Okay, so you're talking about these as potentiation, part of the warm-up before a heavy squat workout.
Sure. Or even making them like a high volume day. The thing is, when you start adding some directionality to it, you're not going to get the same weight numbers on the bar because you're not going to be as strong, but you might get the same muscle unit recruitment, which is really what we're talking about at the end of the day, is how intense of a signal gets fired from your brain to your muscles. And if it's just as intense, whether it's 100 pounds or 900 pounds, doesn't really matter. If we're looking at really what it is that we're going after, which is that signal to build strength.
Yeah.
And maybe variability is okay.
Well, I guess that goes back to the writing checks your body can cash. It's a lot easier to cash that 100-pound check.
Maybe
900-pound check. Well, within reason. Yeah. Okay.
All right, so now I want to ask about emotion.
Definitely contrast and what.
Oh, there's contrast between me and both of you on that. We're both well aware of that one. Okay, one, how do you, if you even know, how do you separate yourself from your emotion? Do you know how?
I think I just observe it. It's a seeing.
I mean, I'm sorry to do this to you, but you're definitely looking at something, so it makes sense that you would say observe it.
She's NLPing you right
now. Well, I can't, because that's also how I learn. I should say I don't do it to make anybody uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It helps me learn a little bit.
It might be a seeing thing. It might be a feeling of, and it might not even be.
I'm sorry. Speaking of emotion, my rabbit is. Thank you.
Rabbit's being crazy.
Rabbit's being crazy right now. We have two bunnies. Yeah.
It's that probably as a day-to-day state, I'm not very reactive. That I can be anxious and I don't need to do anything about it, and then I realize, why am I so anxious? Oh, I'm anxious. Okay. I don't need to be anxious anymore. And I just
what lets you know to let it go?
It's not useful. It's not what I want to experience. There's no truth to it. I go to a logical point where like, why am I worrying about this? Money's an easy one for almost a lot of different people. Like, why am I worrying about this? I can open up. Yeah. I don't know why I'm worrying right now. Oh, it's because my friend sent me that article that was like all money related with Corona or something topical.
Right.
It might be like, no. What I would say that I see with other people is like, why am I shutting this door so aggressively? Why am I putting the fork away why am I throwing the fork away in the drawer? Am I angry? For me, I'm almost always tuned into my movements, and that I try to be smooth as a lifestyle. Like when I set the glass down, I don't set it down. I place it.
Okay.
Just quietly. Yeah. And I think it's just because I'm so tuned into my body, and my body will give me insight to what I'm feeling.
So can I nerd out and continue to ask you a few more questions? Because it is helping me. It helps me learn different ways of doing things for me too. So let's take anxiousness as your example, right? When you get anxious, or like the last time you were anxious, where is it in your body physically?
I don't know. I think it depends.
Okay.
Sometimes chest, sometimes lower stomach. Sometimes it's just like a whole body tension. And like I said, so much of this has come from me developing a very deep awareness with what I feel throughout my body. So I notice when something's off.
Okay, so let's take, I don't need to know the specifics, but let's take the last time you were anxious, perhaps. Okay. That one, where was that one in your body?
Right, this is actually last night. And then it turned into anger.
Okay.
I think it was chest related. What it was is that one of my friends sent me a news article, which they do what they typically do, which is they misquoted some researchers or just took the more appeasing data point, where, for instance, some researchers estimate that social distancing could continue into 2022, which is extremely irresponsible by any researcher or news company to just say the extreme, the maximum, without also saying the minimum. And so initially it was just like, you fucking kidding me? I'm gonna be alone in my apartment for the next year and a half? No fucking way. You know what? I'm opening a speakeasy, but we're not selling drinks, we're selling hugs. Like, so it was first anxiety, like, oh my God, I'm trapped. And then it was like, what fucking assholes sharing that news line without understanding the repercussions that could have when people are already panicking.
Right. I can't, yeah. I do understand you there in a lot of ways.
And then I look at what's maybe not being said or not even looked at, where something could be invented that we've never seen before tomorrow, and things go back to normal next week. Right? That's in the realm of possibility. The amount of innovation and collaboration across the world has never been seen before.
Yes.
That is a fair point.
That is very true.
You get a lot of good minds working together. That's,
like this is a prime soup to invent. Like, so many things have been invented.
Oh, yeah.
I saw an article this morning that the standard practices for how people go on and off ventilators has changed overnight, because they started understanding more about how the lungs work, and it's biomechanically related. When people are on their backs, they have less access to their lungs, so they put them on their side and they get more respiratory volume.
Nice. I like that. Okay, so then the anxiety came in somewhere in your chest, middle of your chest, back, front, like, where is it?
Don't quote me on it, but I did say it's chest.
We're not taking you to court, so it's okay.
Like a corset.
A corset, okay. Oh.
But like up high.
Okay, but up high. Got it, thank you. Which then, and in this particular case, it then turned to anger. Did the anger stay in the same place?
No, probably traveled downwards.
Okay, and then you
had fire in the stomach.
Fire stomach. And everybody has it a little bit different. Anxiety to you or anger to you. Is it a constricting feeling, like you're suffocating? Anger?
No, I mean, it's just a different feeling throughout the body. My thought patterns change. I notice that the thought that comes after another thought that comes after another thought are more, they've got a lacquer, film, anxiousness, anger. Oh, let me get rid of that. I don't want that.
Awesome. Okay, so then you realize all this, and then what happened next?
You either focus on my breathing, I focus on something else. I take my attention elsewhere. I talk to myself like, these are all lies. There's not truth to this. What's true right now is the present moment. I've got a house over my head. I've got food in my fridge. I've got dear friends that I can call. Mm-hmm. Everything's peachy clean. Like, I can't see anybody. Okay.
That makes sense.
I'm fine.
And then it just kind of comes out like you do that, and then everything's gone. Replaced with what?
Calmness. my normal amount of calmness. The ripples in the lake flatten out, and it's just a mirror like lake.
Okay, that is helpful.
For me, it's, I guess, it's a skill in letting go.
Absolutely, yeah.
I don't gain anything by holding on to those things.
No.
So you remember that conversation we were having earlier about different coaches saying the same thing, and then that finally hitting home with whoever it is that they're talking to? This is one of those moments.
Wait, what?
For you or for her?
For her, she's the athlete who's finally getting something that makes sense, and it might be getting through to her after somebody else, I'm not going to say who else, may have been saying the same thing for a while.
To be fair, you haven't let me patiently drill you with questions.
Let me give you an analogy. Okay? I'll give you two analogies.
Oh,
Right? One is a little bit more vivid, and this is from Marcus Aurelius. And I'm going to make it more modern. Life is kind of like you're a dog being towed by a car, leashed to a car. He said chariot, but car. You can either choose to run with the car, it's going to turn, and you can run with it, or you can just lie down and complain or moan and just resist where the car is going to take you, and that's going to lead to a whole lot of road rash or death.
Yeah, resistance is a hell of a resistance is a bitch.
Another one is you could think of flowing through time like being in a river, a lazy river. And eventually there will be some rapids. You can just float on top of the river and coast through the rapids and not hit any rocks, or maybe one or two. Or you can grab onto one of the rocks as soon as you find one, and then you get pummeled by the river over and over and over again and thrown into other rocks and get beaten up. But you've got your rock. Oh, I'm holding on to my rock. I'm safe. Ow, ow, I'm getting the shit kicked out of me. But I got my rock. And so much of this attachment or security or control of, oh, I think I am making my life safe by holding on to this is not true. And it's actually a lot easier if we just, oh, I'm going to let it go. I might get hit once in a while, but it's not as bad as holding on to that thing.
That makes sense. And now I have a lot of questions on where that came from, but I'll hold off because
it's the first few pages of Illusions by Richard Bach. Probably my favorite book. Read it 10 times at least this year.
Richard Bach. Okay.
What was the name of it?
Illusions.
Okay.
Highly recommend it. Amazing book. Favorite book of all time. Super short. You can read it in an afternoon.
That's nice. I like the short books sometimes. Okay, I think that's probably good for me for now. I got stuff that I needed. Do you have questions you want to ask?
I think I grilled him with my questions.
Feeling pretty grilled. When is your book going to be done? Do you know?
We're getting close.
Cool.
We're getting close. By the end of this year, for sure, even if that means come September, I am spending exorbitant amount more times on it. It's really close. I've read through it. I read through it almost every week. The thing is this. I get one chance to publish a book, and the expectations that I'm holding for myself are very high for this book. Not only do I want it to be extremely informative, I want it to be enjoyable, I want it to be beautiful, I want it to be eloquent, I want it to be fucking funny. And there's a few industries that I'm calling out. And if I'm going to make these bold statements, I want to make sure that, one, I really want to make those, and that I feel that I'm correct, and then that I say them as wonderfully as possible. The information has been in the book for a long time. There's no new ideas really going in the book. It's that I've put in all these bricks, and I want to file them down and polish them so there's no seams, and they glisten and they're beautiful, and it's a work of art. as well as information. So that's the delay.
I like it though. I'm excited for it. Okay, so if people want to, I don't know, follow you, read, I know you still write your articles on stuff that, or you at least have been. You had been
So
writing
a
blogs.
few things. Yeah. If you want to sign up to know when the book is out, you can do so at movementbanking.com.
Okay.
I write poetry when I don't want to work on the book. As a fun, playful form. It's my true playing with words. It's also how I practice becoming a better writer. I publish that at austineinhorn.com and on my Instagram at austineinhorn. Any training, movement type stuff is through Apiros. You can find more about that and anything that I've written that related. Apiros, www.apiros.team, and on Instagram at apiros.team. Twitter, I'm rarely on, but that's at Austin Einhorn.
I never got into Twitter. I don't know. I tried. Wasn't my thing though. Okay. Well, thanks for doing this with us today.
Of course, this was a blast. I love talking with you guys.
Maybe if you want to do it, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what your schedule is going to be like over the next couple weeks, but
Pretty
I don't
open.
know. I could come up with a shit ton more questions to do.
Sure, if
I
you
had a
want.
bunch of different ideas before the call that I figured we'd see how this goes,
Yeah.
and I'll bring it up.
My only limiting factor is that I'm limiting how much screen time that I get every day.
I actually really understand that. I was just telling Travis that if I look at the screen too long, I get too anxious and like, I can't. I gotta.
That's actually a biological response. That when we
Right.
focus on a certain thing for a very long time, that starts triggering more sympathetic or fight or flight responses, and then when we look out into wide expanses or have what's kind of being called panorama vision, where you just look at this big open space and zone out, it starts to trigger more rest and digest or parasympathetic reflexes.
Thank you.
So it's not just you, it's how we are wired. Some people are just more sensitive than others.
I was hoping that that was the case, but I
So-
definitely didn't have science on that.
It's a bad idea to watch TV after eating a big meal if you're trying to digest faster.
That's a hard, I mean, that if I answered that,
I'm
it'd
just
be a
going out on a limb.
maybe.
We could go with it for now.
What I would say is get
no hard science on that, but that's fine.
what I'm going to say for your health is get a giant ass TV and then a theater room.
There you go.
So the TV is so big, you have that panorama vision.
That would be amazing. Oh my God. Okay, well, thank you for this. And yeah, I'm looking forward to next time.
Yeah, please. And then let me know where my followers can find the recording and give it a listen.
Okay, well, as soon as it's up and ready to go.
Cool.
All right, bye, my friend.
Bye.
Thank you.
Nice to see you again.
So that was Austin Einhorn. I hope you guys really enjoyed it. We had a great time filming that. Everything below on how to get a hold of Austin, sign up for his newsletter announcing his new book and everything out like that is below in the description. Please check him out. Again, leave any comments, share, like. The more people are liking this, sharing it, engaging in it, the more we can help other people with all these good things, and the more wonderful people we can have to help you learn and discover new things to get that mind-body connection for you in your life. Until next time, have a great day.